What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the next episode of Sports Talk with Hawk. I am Hawk. The Christmas Day extravaganza is over. Oh my goodness. Not going to talk about the games from the NFL right now. We're going to focus on the college football playoff, which will be taking place on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. But we're going to be looking backwards a little bit because it was a very toxic weekend. Very toxic. And I was extremely disappointed. Extremely disappointed in the big media. There were a lot of false narratives being thrown around Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, Sunday. The reality of college football is the reason we love it is because of the atmospheres. College football has a home field advantage that's unpalpable. You don't have games like you do at SoFi, like the Colts have had multiple years or multiple times this year with road fans dominating the stadium. It doesn't happen in college football. For goodness sakes, the game against the Bills, we had MVP chants in Lucas Oil Stadium for the opposing quarterback that were loud, that you could hear over the television screen. In SoFi, you've got maybe some home field advantage. Maybe, like a lot of the time, it's 50-50 opponent and home. That's not what college football is. Not at all. College football, you're 85% home fans. Period. Dot. Done. Like, there's no question about this. So, what happened in the college football playoff opening weekend was really simple. Home field advantage mattered. It mattered more than it does in the NFL. Vegas had the point spread relatively correct. They had them wider. They were all a touchdown or more. Why? Because home games matter. Being the home team matters. So let's start with the opening game, IU and Notre Dame. I had two takeaways from that game. Takeaway number one, the quarterback wasn't as good as what people thought he was. 3 games, the last 3 games against the quality opponents. Take out the Purdue game. That game, take it out. Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame, the 3 games, his last 3 games against quality opponents, Curtis Rourke failed. Failed miserably. When your quarterback fails, it's hard to win in any league. But especially if you're on the road in Notre Dame Stadium with how loud it was, with the temperatures where they were. It's not easy. Curtis Rourke failed. That game ended up being what it was because of Curtis Rourke and because he failed the team. Again. The second takeaway was Indiana's got NFL players on defense, and I am super pumped about it. Super pumped about it. I really believe that defense did the best it could And the commentators weren't great. Not gonna lie, they weren't great. You can tell they don't love college football the way that you need to be able to commentate on the sport correctly, which always drives me nuts. It really does. Drives me nuts. And they're making all the, the cliche quotes, but going against them. Like the cliche, the simple fact is, if you take away Julian Love's 98-yard touchdown run, the Indiana defense held them the rest of the game. You missed one run. What happened was, when it was Curtis Rourke's turn to make Notre Dame mess up on their worst part, the pass defense, Rourke couldn't hit wide open receivers that had just busted loose in the coverage. He overthrew them, he outthrew them, he underthrew them. Like, it was just bad. Notre Dame got one play on the ground. Indiana's defense, after 3 and out to open the game by IU's offense, Indiana's defense gets an interception, gives them a shot. What does Rourke do? Throws a pick in between 3 defenders and an umpire. Like, come on. Give me a break. So I'm not upset about that game. I watched it all the way through. It's hard to win on the road in college football. These are 20-year-olds. You're asking to have the mentality of 30-year-olds, of late 20-year-olds. Okay? Just remember this. The next game, SMU and Penn State. This is the game I kind of thought was going to get out of hand. A whiteout in Penn State, Happy Valley. Ohio State struggles there. Okay, so SMU, Texas team, going up to Pennsylvania. It was cold, whiteout. They've never been in a stadium like that before because they didn't play anybody this year. Never been in a stadium like that before. And SMU didn't necessarily look overwhelmed, but Penn State was just flat out better. They were just better. SMU totally deserved to be there. But listen, you drew Penn State in Happy Valley. That's kind of what's going to happen. Just is. That's kind of what's going to happen. So that game didn't bother me at all. So it became a blowout. So what? Happy Valley, it's what Penn State does to a lot of teams. Not named Ohio State. And Michigan with Jim Harbaugh. Okay? Let's just be realistic here. You got to be realistic. What's the other realism? Clemson got in by a nice long 56-yard field goal to beat SMU, and they drew Texas. I mean, come on. Are we really going to complain about the fact that Clemson got in, winning their conference, had to play Texas, and honestly showed a lot of fight and a lot of heart? I'm not. I'm absolutely not. Wasn't it? It's not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. Texas was better. They're bigger. You could tell that just by watching the game on the field. They're bigger. So you lost to the bigger team. Okay. And then we get to the game that everybody thought could be, couldn't be, Tennessee and Ohio State. Now, here's the thing about this game. For those of you that don't know, there was a senator in Ohio is trying to push through a bill. It's the OHIO Sportsmanship Act to make flag planting at Ohio Stadium a chargeable offense, a felony charge. Okay, how stupid. Absolutely stupid. Beat the other team then. Defend your turf. They beat you, deal with it. Don't cry to somebody. Deal with it. Nobody has sympathy for you. Nobody. Well, Ohio State did what I thought was really dirty. Again, like I'm not so sure that Ryan Day hasn't lost this team. Because Ohio State was trying to bully and threaten Tennessee during warm-ups when Tennessee's just walking to the locker room and the Ohio State players are trying to crowd them and are chirping at them. The game hasn't even started yet. And you just got boat raced by Michigan. Tennessee was out there. They played hard. Their offense wasn't ready for it. But the reality is, like, this is where you're at. College football on the road. It's hard to win. Georgia got dismantled by Ole Miss on the road. Vanderbilt beat Alabama. Alabama was on the road. Road is a hard place to play. Oregon went into Camp Randall, the end of their season, and squeaked out a W on the road. There's no question Oregon's better than Wisconsin. No question. But on the road. Like, let's just take a deep breath. All these next games, the next games are all at neutral sites. And you know what? If there's some bowl games that want to pick up, and there's a couple that I would say should. If there's some bowl games that want to piggyback on the college football playoff and have bowl game sites end up taking over these games, that could be a reiteration or a switch up of what's to come. It could be. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not really trying to predict right now because I think it's not, I know I'm odd. I'm the oddball right now. I don't think it's broken. I think there's only two things that need to happen if you want to level the field completely. If you want to level the field completely, you need to make the first 4 games still neutral site bowl games. Pick the 4. The closest team to each one of those 4 places, that's going to be the higher seed, gets the home game, gets the quote-unquote home game, whatever it may be. But the second thing is they need to reseed after the first round is done, just like the NFL. Because this is probably one of the biggest criticisms, and I think it's the only one that's actually warranted. The bracket needs to reset heading into the second round. Bracket needs to reset heading into the next round. Ohio State shouldn't be playing Oregon as the 8th seed. Or I guess technically they should be playing Oregon as the 8th seed. They would either way. Like this is what's kind of interesting. They would be playing Ohio State either way as the 8th seed. Because all the other seeds won. What I do believe A bracket reset is in order to make all of this actually play out correctly. So 1 would play 8. 2 would play 7, 3 plays 6, and 4 plays 5. Now the funny thing is, that's actually how it's going to work out. And now let's look ahead. Let's look ahead to what is next week. My prediction has always been Boise State and Oregon. That's my prediction. I think Boise State's a lot better than people are going to give them credit for. I think Boise State is a lot better than people give them credit for. And I like the running game. I like the quarterback, Madsen. I like all these different players that they have. They are absolutely 100% able to beat Penn State. And I think they will. Neutral site game. Penn State's going to have to play really, really, really tough. Boise State's defense is scrappy. And it could become a real big running game. It really could. But I like Boise State. Penn State fans won't be happy, but I like Boise State. Notre Dame, Georgia. Beck's out. Yeah, I know we got backup quarterback, but correct me if I'm wrong. Florida State last year went undefeated. And because their starting quarterback was down, was left out of the playoff. But this year, Georgia has their starting quarterback go down for the playoff, and they're still in. And got a bye. Just saying. I don't buy Georgia. I won't buy Georgia. Georgia's a fraud. Absolute fraud. Notre Dame, I think, with Julian Love back on turf, Notre Dame's fast enough. Notre Dame has a good enough offensive line. Riley Leonard will be asked to run with his legs, and I think that's how you beat Georgia. That's where Sarkisian screwed up twice, is not keeping Arch Manning in the game to beat Georgia with his feet. Georgia struggles with running quarterbacks. Absolutely struggles with running quarterbacks. And you know what? Notre Dame's got one. And as far as running quarterbacks go, he's not a bad one. I got Notre Dame beating Georgia. So it's going to be Boise State versus Notre Dame in the semifinals. Now, then you got the other games. You got Oregon, Ohio State. Listen, Oregon's faster. And I trust Dylan Gabriel more than I trust Will Howard. So I'm going with Oregon. I think Oregon's the best team in the country. Period. Dan Lanning has done an absolutely dang good job. So I'm not even going to belabor this one. They beat them the first time at home. Neutral site. Ohio State had to play Tennessee. Oregon's kind of been resting, not losing anybody to the transfer portal, blah, 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 blah. Oregon's better. Could it be a close game again? Absolutely. But I got Oregon winning. Which leaves us with the final game, which is the 4 versus 5. Arizona State winning their conference, getting the bye, now plays Texas. Now, what is so interesting about this game? What is so interesting about this game? Nobody's going to give Arizona State a chance. Everybody's going to say how good of a story it is. The funny thing is, they've said this about IU, SMU. The thing is, they were talking about strength of schedule, and those idiot commentators that were commenting on the Notre Dame IU game were like, strength of schedule has to stop mattering. Really? Notre Dame was only 6 positions higher than IU on strength of schedule, and they lost to an unranked team, to a Northern Illinois team. They lost. Indiana lost to 2 ranked teams this year. Ohio State on the road. Notre Dame on the road. They didn't lose at home to an unranked team. Like Ohio State did, by the way. Ohio State lost at home to Michigan. But because it's a big brand, we give Ohio State a pass. They also lost to Oregon on the road. Like, this is why Joel Klatt is 100% correct. Big brand bias is going to continue to hurt college football if the biasy doesn't get out of it. College football's making money anyway. Like the NFL. Would the NFL rather have 2 big market teams every Super Bowl? Would they rather have Philly, big fan base, San Francisco, historic, Pittsburgh, fan base? Would they rather have them in the Super Bowl every year? Of course they would. Of course they would. But you don't get that. Now, the Chiefs have dominated as of late. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. This isn't a big market team. It's Kansas City, people. Major League Baseball didn't want the Royals being good for consistent years and being in the World Series. It's the Royals. Like, this is where you're at now. In football, they've figured it out. Small markets are okay. The money's there anyway. So what if you don't double and triple the previous Super Bowl's viewership? Does the NFL want to? Sure. Do they need to? No. Same with college football. Do you want Alabama in the college football playoff? Sure. I remember before Nick Saban, when they weren't good. We didn't need them then. We were doing just fine with Florida, Ohio State. That's the year of Oklahoma and Boise State in the freaking Fiesta Bowl. Like, we didn't need them back then. Why do we all of a sudden need them now? We don't need them. It's not a need. They want them there. Oh, absolutely want them there. Absolutely want them there. Absolutely. But you don't need. This isn't a need. It's college football. As many people have said, it's tribal. The fans are going to watch. The playoff games got views. They got viewership. Whether they were blowouts or not, they got viewership. Leave it alone. Don't start thinking that big brands are the only ones that can be there. Alabama lost 3 games. 3. They lost to unranked team. Stop telling me that Alabama is going to mop the floor just like Notre Dame did. Alabama hasn't been strong all year long. They have got legitimate problems. Don't tell me Ole Miss was that great. Like, just stop. The only thing you can do in college football is beat the schedule you have. That's the only thing you can do. That's it. And if you do that, you should be rewarded for it. In a 12-team playoff, you should have SMUs and IUs every year. And that's how it should be. You can only beat the teams you play. You make it through your season 11-1, you should be rewarded for it more than a team that didn't even get double-digit wins and went 9-3. So I'm ecstatic about how this is working out. Giving legitimate games to college football that matter. I've watched some of the bowl games, not much. I think they need to revamp the bowl system. 500 cannot be the level anymore. That's what I'm leaning with. You can't just be 6-6 and make a bowl game. I think that's kind of where the issue is right now. I think you should need to win 7. Because then if you win, you're 8-5. If you lose the bowl game, you're 7-6. I think it needs to be revamped a little bit. And then from the bowl games you lose because of raising that up, 4 bowl games then go to the playoff. So the first 4 playoff games are neutral site games. I love the atmospheres. It's electric. It's a playoff game. I don't think it needs to change. I think it's something that will help level everything out. Because now Ohio State doesn't have to go to Autzen. Texas doesn't have to go to Sun Devil Stadium. Penn State's not going up to the blue turf in Boise, Idaho. Notre Dame isn't going to Georgia. Neutral sites can change things. The fans get to buy tickets and be 50-50. They're not home games. So I think that's the only thing that needs to change. I really do. I think that's the only thing that may need to change. But I love it. It's a college football playoff. We've got 12 teams. It made November college football matter. It made November college football really matter. And that is something that hasn't been the case and was awesome. Heading into the final week, everything had kind of been set with the conference championship games. But that last week, if Georgia Tech, rivalry week was wild. If Georgia Tech hangs on and beats Georgia, the only way they get in is by winning their conference championship. Like that's what it turned into. And it was awesome. It was an awesome final week. Michigan beats Ohio State. It's a conference game. Ohio State missed out on the rematch with Oregon right away. Like there's so many aspects to this that I love. It's good for college football. College football is healthy right now. The 12-team playoff is exactly the number it should be. Don't mess with it. 12-team playoff, perfect. Leave it alone. I like where we're at. I really do. Keep it set up the way it is. Tweak, not necessarily fix, but tweak a couple of things. And I think it's exactly where it needs to be for the next 10, 15 years. So there's my thoughts on the college football playoff. I loved it. I'm excited for these games coming up because we don't get these we get Ohio State and Oregon, whatever. You don't get Boise State against other teams very often. They played Oregon at the beginning of the year and looked pretty good. Boise State doesn't get this chance very often. Notre Dame doesn't really play many hard games, let's be honest here. They have a lot of their traditional games that they play. A lot of their traditional games. So I'm excited for this. I really am. College football playoff is going to be exciting, and I can't wait for it to finish out. All right, guys. The next podcast will be the week 17 reset based off of the games that happened yesterday, based off of the games that'll be, coming up here. I'm looking at the reset. Everybody will have the team. Potentially, there will be a lot of teams with their matchups already set, which is big, which is really big. So we will do the reset heading into the weekend with the 3 Saturday games. That'll be in the next podcast. For now, this is where we're at. And I'm still full from yesterday. So we're going to sign it off here. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Hope you all had a Merry Christmas. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, like the podcast, and ring the notification bell. And, well, that'll be it. For Sports Talk with Hawk, I'm Hawk, and I'm out.